Okay, I'd like to call this video "Court Cards Do Not Have to Be a Problem." Because if you've ever read tarot cards and a court card has come up, you sort of know it's a problem. But I think it's not that necessary. So we know there are 4 suits. And we know that there's a page, a knight, a king and a queen for each of these 4 suits. A page, a queen, a knight and a king for each of the 4 suits. So we know that these court cards represent people. And these people behave in a certain way. So there are differences between them. The Queen of Wands is different from the Queen of Swords, for instance. They look different and they behave in a certain kind of a way. So we also know that court cards can represent the questioner, or they can represent somebody that the questioner is going to meet, or somebody who will come into the life of the questioner for a while. So we've got a spread, and let's say we turn over some cards and we get the Page of Wands. So you are going to be like this individual, or you're going to meet somebody like this, and depending on the other card, certain things are going to happen or not. Okay. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying to a questioner, the Queen of Wands is in the future. This may be you, and you would act in such and such a way, or else this could be somebody that you would meet. And in some way, I don't think it really matters, and I don't think it's really that important or that necessary for the reader to know whether this Queen of Wands, for instance, is going to be the native of the questioner, or whether it's going to be somebody who'll come into the questioner's life. Because sometimes it's going to be both. And at the same time, why not just let the questioner have the experience? Send them away knowing that they may behave this way, or they are going to meet somebody like that. Because it may be that it's more important for the reader to give the questioner an idea of what the other people in our lives are for. So the Queen of Wands may be somebody you meet, but this Queen of Wands, whether it's you or somebody else, has certain lessons to teach you about you. So you ought to pay attention to court cards from that point of view. Thing is, we need other people in our lives because they teach us about us, if we can handle it. So we have an idea of ourselves, and it may be a correct idea or it can be very inaccurate, because it's a bit like somebody who's very messy, who thinks that they're neat and tidy. You know, and I'm sure we know people who are kind of contradictions. They've got a certain opinion about themselves, but everybody else knows that they're not actually like that. So we sometimes get very angry or very upset by something that somebody else does, and we can just stay angry. Or if we stay angry, then we sort of erase the understanding that we have. But if we can realize that being angry at somebody else is telling us something about us. It's telling us that the picture we have about ourselves needs to be adjusted, and this is a good thing. So let's say, if you imagine that people are driving, and let's say you drive and you see somebody who doesn't come to a complete stop at a stop sign, or they don't signal before they change the lanes. And we've all seen this all the time, and we probably do it all the time, but it's when you get really angry about somebody else, that's when you have to realize that you are actually telling you that your picture of yourself isn't as correct as it ought to be. And so if it's a driving incident, you're not such a great driver as you think. You become careless or sloppy and you don't realize it. Okay, so if you pay attention when people get you upset, let's say when you're driving, and you realize you're telling you to take a look at yourself because you need to make some changes and some improvements. And that type of information can be involved with court cards when they come up in a reading. So a queen upside down, you can find you get very annoyed with somebody who wants to run the show. And this is because actually you want to run the show, and you run the show more than you think, but you've got the idea that you're actually quite obedient and cooperative with other people, but actually you're not. So, the thing is, it's useful for the questioner if they look below the surface when it comes to other people and wonder what the situation or what the other person is trying to teach you, if you're the questioner. And so it may be that people have difficulties with court cards because they're not quite sure what role other people play in their life. So that's something general, just as a background to looking at court cards. And so we know we've got 4 court cards: the page, the queen, the knight, and the king. And we know that pages are young people and knights are younger individuals as well. So you can get an idea of age from whether it's a page or a knight or a queen or a king, because queens and kings are obviously older people. But instead of old and young, we might want to say youthful for pages and knights and mature for queens and kings. So you expect pages and wands, because they're not that experienced, because they're not that mature, they're going to make mistakes that older people, queens and kings, are not going to make. And in the same way, maybe queens and kings, because they're mature, they're more set in their ways. So you would expect versatility and adaptability from pages and knights that you might not expect from queens and kings, because they're older. Presumably they're wiser as well, but they're probably going to be more set in their ways because of the fact that they're that much older. So